Today I'm making a trilobite wristband for my Apple Watch. You can do it with any kind of watch. This is more so just showing you the connecting technique. And what you're going to need is about 5 feet of paracord and about 7 feet. You can do it with a little more or a little less, but I think these are going to be good lengths for me. And I'm going to do the Mad Max style closure, so it's basically just, it uses friction to hold it closed, so you have a loop on one end, and then you pass the two ends of the other piece of paracord through, and that's how it's going to stay closed. I think it's going to work pretty good. But this 5 foot length is going to be my loop side. So what I'm going to do is get it approximately half. Make sure you don't have twists in your paracord, but approximately half past the two ends from the top. Past the two ends from the top of the watch through the loop. And you can get these loops off of Amazon, or if you have a Tandy Leather, you can also go there. They sell them too. If you don't have a Tandy Leather, or you don't want to buy them off of Amazon, you have a Best Buy or any type of store that sells Apple band accessories. These are just, this is just an elastic one, but it comes in a 2-pack for like 15 bucks. And those should work pretty good. They are a little bit of a cheaper quality, but they should still work pretty good. So I'm just going back around with one of the tails. Sorry, it's probably going to look a little messy for a while, but I'm just passing through the top and then passing it through the loop to try and get it closer. And that way it doesn't slide around as much. I'm just going around, passing it through the top, and then going back through. You just want to make sure that it's close. You're kind of making a hitch with a tag end. I'm just going to start off there first. Maybe take a little bit of the slack out, because you want the watch to be centered with a loop pretty tight against the nail. But on the other side, so that's kind of how you want it to look first. And when you tighten it up, it shouldn't move around on you as much. But on the other side, sorry, I'm just making sure I got this right. Yeah. On the other side, go back, get about half of your paracord. And half, try and get all the twists out. But on this side, you're going to pass through the bottom. Then through the loop. Just pull tight. That's kind of what it looks like. And then what you're also going to do is pass the paracord back through the bottom. That way it comes back up on top, and that should help keep it secured. But you're not passing this paracord back through the loop because you need this loop to do the knot. I'm just going to do that again. So just passing it through. Make sure there's no twists. Just getting it kind of lined up. Loop on the nail, around the nails. What I'm going to do now is put some electrical tape around the watch. That way it stays in place. Just trying to get it centered, roughly centered. You want it to be pretty close, but it doesn't have to be exact. So I'm just going to go around a couple of times. Get it pretty centered. Go around it. Try and keep your lengths of cord pretty straight. You want to go pretty tight around this, that way it doesn't shift on you. So I'm going around in one direction, and it's kind of hard to see, but it's tilting this way since I'm pulling the tape that way. So what I'm going to do now is, if I can, break that off. Make sure it's still pretty centered. Make sure it's pretty centered. Yeah, that's about 2.5. That looks pretty good. It's going to be helpful if you have a jig. You don't need a jig, but it's going to make your life a lot easier if you do, because you're not going to have to worry about, is my length getting a little too long on one section, or is it now way too short because I tightened it up too much? So this jig is just going to help you. But you can either make a jig or you can buy a jig. I just made this one because it was going to be a lot cheaper and a lot more time wise. It was a lot cheaper on that part too. But this is pretty much the setup. I'm just going to go in, remove that slack, get along the nail, tighten up on one side, tighten up on the other. And on this side, I'm going to do the same thing. It's not going to stay exactly in that one spot on this side until you start tying it. I'm just trying to get this all lined up and good. That's the setup. So now that you're set up, you can go into the trilobite. If you already know it, you can fast forward at this point, but I unfortunately have to look it up because I haven't done it in a while. Now that we're set up, we can start tying. Just make sure it's tight. You're going to start on this loop side first. You're going to start with your right strand. I'm going to go over the front, right strand, then on the left strand, on top of your right strand, underneath, behind and through. You're just going to want to make sure that that's pretty snug against there. Make sure it's lined up. Once you get a few stitches, you're going to be able to pull it a little tighter, but you're going to go around and under. Actually, you're going to start on the left strand. Sorry, I haven't done this in a while, so I'm actually watching a tutorial myself. But you're going to go over, under, over, behind with the right strand, over the middle, under. You're going to kind of want to see kind of like that. So we're not going to pull it super tight yet, but just get it snug. Just go over, under, over, behind, over, and under. Just make sure it's snug. Kind of pulling this tight. This is a little bit of a difficult tie to do, but once you get it going, it should be a little easier. Just pulling this tight. Going through my stitches, making sure they're tight. That's not looking right though. Yeah, that's not looking quite right. Just pulling this tight. So around, under, over like that, then under, over, under. Pulling that tight. Yeah, that looks a little better. Just cinch it up. Over, under, over, and go around. Can be a little tedious. That doesn't look quite right, so I'm actually going to do this. Pull it back through. There we go. I think that looks, yeah, that looks a little better. Make sure you're getting the right look. You just want to keep following that pattern of on the left side, go over, over, under, over. Then on the right side, go under, over, under. Just make sure it's snug. Just want to make sure it's snug on the nail and snug against the cords. You want it to make it look as even as possible. But I'm probably going to speed this up and then show you on the other side what you need to do. And it's going to be, I think the other side's going to be a little easier just because you're already starting off with the 4 cords, so you don't have to start with that starting loop. But we're just tightening it up, keeping it snug. Just see how you want to stitch this for one time. Also, just make sure it's not twisting on you. Okay. You can use this looping style that I showed you before to do different stitches too. It doesn't necessarily have to be trilobite, but that's what I'm just going for. You can do it. One of my guidelines are to do the same pattern to go leaf. But just make sure it's not twisted on you. Okay. Brush it up. Brush this a little closer to me. Looks like music. One down 3. So what I'm doing now to get a couple more stitches in, sorry, I'm gonna put a fid on this. So I'm just melting the end, making a bit of a point, and then lock it onto the fid if I can. It was a little too much material. Actually, cut it at a little bit of an angle. I'm remembering it a little bit better now. Cut it at a little bit of an angle. Melt it. Make it into a little bit of a point. And twist it on. It would be better if you have two, but I only have one. So now I'm just doing that same pattern. Pulling it tight. Probably gonna get one more stitch in. So now I'm gonna take this fid off of that, put it on the other side. So going through. Oh, almost did that wrong. Almost passed that through the wrong way, but now I think I got this right. So there we go. There we go. So I think, can't remember exactly. So I think I'm gonna hold off right there on this side at least, and then cut and melt it at the end. Because if I'm remembering correctly, you kind of want to pass it through a couple of stitches, cut it back, and then melt it on the back. That way it holds tight. I think that's pretty good, especially on this other side to get the look you're wanting. But now that we're done with that side, I'm trying to figure this out. Yeah, okay, I think I figured it out. On this side, you just want to go in and do the same thing that you were doing on the other side. Actually, over, under, and go over, under, over. No, that's not gonna work. So, dang it. First stitch is going to look a little messy. I don't think I'm doing this right, dang it. Sorry, this is going to take me a minute to figure out. Probably going to fast forward it while I'm figuring this out. And I'll bring you back when I do. Let's go. I figured out, so what you're going to do is basically a twist stitch. So you're going to take your right strand, go over, take your left strand, go around, and then loop all of your strands together. I think that's going to make the plans before, just make sure you don't confuse your stitches. Make sure it's tight. Hopefully you can see that. But yeah, so you're basically doing first stitch, I think it's going to make the but now you're going to over, under, over again, and then go around, over, under. I think that's basically what you want to do. Yeah, it's got to be what you want to do. It's going to look the same thing, I think. Actually, no, that's not right. I was just now. Okay, I figured it out. Because this has to, on your left strand rather, just pulling this through. On your left strand, you actually want to go over your bar. Make sure it's tight and not twisted. But you want to go, the reason why you want to go over on your left strand on the bar, so that you can get your right stitches. So it's going to go around, under, over. And on this side, it's going to do, yeah, that's the right technique. So on your right strand, you're going to go underneath the watch and pop over. And then on your left strand, you're going to go over it and have it pop underneath it. Yep, that's exactly what it's, okay. Yep, figured it out. Cool. Then you're just going to keep stitching. You just want to make sure it's tight. So just pulling this snug. Pulling this snug. Cool. So now it's going to be the same thing as you were doing before. Under, over, under. Again, make sure it's not twisted. Pull it tight. Pull it tight. We're going to keep going until you're out of space. Pull tight. I'm just going to speed this up until we get to the end. Again, Alexa, play music.
All right, here's Spotify.
My darling son, I remember when I would sing to you and I would do it again. Child, remember this too.
Alexa, volume down 2. Alexa, pause. So we're getting to the end. Just gonna cut this off. Pull it off. This is looking pretty good. Oh, that's actually perfect. Cool. I wanted it a little smaller than my wrist. That way, I could pull on the end and it would be fine if it left a little bit of space, like if it pulled out a little bit of space. I'll probably throw maybe 1 or 2 stitches once I get it around. So I'm not going to tie it. I'm not going to cut those off yet. But now that we're getting to the end, I needed to pull it off of the jig to get this absolutely tight, but losing space pretty quickly. You just need to, for the last couple of stitches, you need to pull it off of the jig, at least for the end with the tails through it. So I'm gonna make a fid end again, cut out that angle. Oh, there we go. Okay. No, didn't put enough of an angle on there. They sell fids in different sizes and stuff. This is just a small one. They sell them on Amazon and other like paracord specific stores and stuff online. But this is just one of the smaller ones that I found. I found this one at Hobby Lobby. It was like $3. But you might have to go to a more specific craft store like Hobby Lobby in order to get it. You just want it to be pretty snug on the end, so I'm just pulling on this. I don't know if I can get, I'll try and get one more stitch in, but I don't think I can. So it's actually going to work out in my benefit. Oh. Get one more stitch with the other side. You just want the strands to be even on either side, so I'm putting one more stitch on this other side with this. Oh, that wasn't quite enough of an angle. There we go. If you don't have a fid, you can kind of use the paracord as a fid. It'll just take you a lot longer to make it like that, because what you have to do is, oh, that's not perfect, but I think it'll work. What you have to do if you try that technique is you have to melt a lot at the end of the paracord in order to get a long enough piece that's rigid enough. Pulling this through. There we go. That's pretty good. And I don't think that's going to shift around on me a lot. You just want to make sure that the end is tight. That way it doesn't pull through the end. But that looks pretty good. And then on this other side, what you're going to want to do, I'm just pulling this out a little bit. I'm actually going to do, just double check this while it's still pretty loose. Oh, dang it, if I can. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So it's still going to be a little loose, as you can see. You can try and get more stitches or be a little more precise about it. I kind of want it a little loose, that way it won't will be not as snug. But now you're going to, there we go. So now you're just going to want to pass your paracord through the end. Don't get it tight yet, just pass it through the end. That way, this is at least for me, I feel like it gets a little bit tighter, and you want it to stay tight. That way you have enough friction for years to come on it. So I gotta remake this fit end, but enough of an angle, out the end. Okay, I think that's gonna be good. Almost dropped that, but so that's pretty much your bracelet, your band. But now that this is tight, well, now that your strands are in there, you might want to snug this up a bit. So I'm just pulling this tight, and then I'll put a few more stitches in there. I'm just making sure that that's going to be loose enough that it, well, because you don't want the ends to be touching, or your, especially for the Apple Watch. If it's a regular watch and you don't want it super tight along your wrist, that's fine. But since it's an Apple Watch or any type of like fitness watch that you want to do this with, you'll need it a little bit tighter. So you might want to shrink this size by like 1/8 of an inch, your wrist size by 1/8 of an inch. be quite right. I did that wrong. But so I'm just going to put a few more stitches in this end. It would be a lot more helpful if you had 2 fids. That way you didn't, sorry, I'm probably casting a lot of shadows, but if you had 2 or more fids, it might be helpful. But you kind of want smaller ones than bigger ones, especially for a project like this. Just that way, when you push it through, it doesn't leave as much of a gap. But we're getting to the end. Just make sure it looks pretty uniform, pretty stable. That's why you want so much slack on it, because you don't know if you're going to put more stitches in or not. So I'm probably just going to put one more in there. Make sure. So that's pretty good. So I'm just kind of moving it around, making sure that it looks pretty uniform. That's really tight, so that's not gonna move around on me a lot, I think. Cool. So now what I'm gonna do is do one more stitch, just on the right side, to get this to be on the back. Okay. Woo. Cool. So I think just pulling it tight. Cool. So know that these strands are both on the back side. What you're going to want to do is actually going to take this one side off. That way I don't burn that. But so now you're going to cut it. Maybe kind of hard to show it. But now you're going to cut your strands a little bit further back than you think. That way you have enough material to melt and press in on the back side. So I'm just cutting it about a little bit further back. Make it a little easier on myself that I'm not just shredding it. I'm gonna cut that, pull it a little bit, and then make sure you get the end good and melted. Just don't burn your other strands. And just press it in. Cool. So that's kind of what you're gonna go for. I melted it a little bit much, but you want more meltage than you think. That way it doesn't pull. Meltage isn't a real word, but that's what I always call it, because it's a fun word to say. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So now I'm gonna try it out, pull it tight. And so this is just sliding through. That's pretty comfortable. That looks pretty good. It's a little tight on this end, but I don't think that looks too bad. One thing to remember though, if you're doing this style of closure, you don't want it to be super tight. You need a little bit of length on the end of your string. That way when you go to pull it off, you can slide your hand out of there. So what I'm going to do is pull this tight, and then you measure good 3 or 4 inches out, and then tie your finishing knot on there. And that's probably a little excessive. You can probably go with 2.5, maybe even 2. What I'm gonna do actually, sorry for the bump, pull it loose. Actually, let me see. So pull it tight. See kind of how it falls on you. So I have like a finger width apart. Now I'm gonna pull it loose until it can slide over my hand easily. You can also start tying your knot right there, and that might be a little bit better that way you know that it's loose enough. I'll pull it a little tighter. That it's loose enough where I can get my hand through it, and that can act as your stop. But I'm gonna pause right here and get some food. But yeah, I'll see you back in a little bit. Now that the bracelet is done, all we have to do is tie a stopper knot. You can do a couple different knots. You can either do a snake knot, but I'm going to do a diamond knot. So just going to take you're going to take your 2 strands in between your fingers. I'm going to just do it through one. That way I have a little less slack. But you're going to take your right strand, loop it around. You're going to take your left strand, go around, go over, under, over. So you're kind of going to have a diamond shape with these 2 loops around it. Now what you're going to do is go around. So your left strand is going to go around towards the right, and you're going to go around the one on the right side of your finger and go through. Then with your right strand, you're going to basically do the same thing, but go around and through the center. You're just going to snug it up a little bit, but you also want to make sure that it still fits, which it does. It's a little snug, but it's not too bad. It's going to take you a little bit of time to kind of get this sorted, but it's pretty easy. So I'm just going through, tightening it up. I'm going to pull it all at the same time to try and get it snug, but you just want to follow your strand, go around, and tighten it up slowly. It'll take you a little bit of time to get it looking right. It's going to look really messy, which is fine for now, but you want it to be tight. So just going through, probably speed it up a little bit, that way it doesn't take a long time. Coming through. It's kind of hard to see, it's kind of messy. You just want to make sure you keep it tidy. Make sure. Go for each strand. Yeah, nice and neat. I'm just pulling out each strand. After you're done getting all tight, there's a couple different modifications that you can do on this knot, and there's plenty of videos out there on that. But this is coming out pretty good. It slides over my wrist, my hand rather, pretty easily. You can tighten it up. You can make this knot a little shorter. You can walk it down, but if you want to walk it down, that way you don't have as much slack on it. You don't want to tighten it up super tight. More so, I put it on my wrist to try and see how much slack I have. I might actually flip this band around, but that's pretty easy. That looks pretty good. Let me pull it off. You can leave a little bit of slack on there like that. That was just to get that extra stuff out. But you can leave a little bit of slack, melt to your ends, and keep it like that. But what I'm going to do is cut it shorter and melt it down, because that's just the look I want it to have. Melt it a little bit. You don't want to melt it too much, because then it'll make it look a little bit uglier. But you can cut it really short or cut it a little longer and get it black. That way it blends in a little bit better. You can probably see that. But I think that looks pretty good. But that's bracelet done. Stays tight. But there's a lot of different closures and stuff you can do on there. That was more so to show how to, this video was more so to show how to start a trilobite, if you're going with that. But if you start a trilobite and you just want it to, you can do it like this, and you can do knot and loop. If you like, what you'll do is you just keep this loop a little bit bigger. That way that knot can go through, but it doesn't pull out super easy. And you'll just have to make sure that you get your wrist size right for that. But that's the end of the video. Have a good day, guys.